Hi everybody, Coffee Grump here. Today we're going to talk about the knobs on the Specialista series. They're sometimes break off and they need replacing. Had a couple machines come through where the knob is broken off in the D-scale mode and it actually puts the machine constantly in D-scale, and the client couldn't use it until the knob got fixed. This one's still good, but this one we're gonna have to replace. There was two ways to do this. The original way to replace the knobs, we actually had to replace this whole panel, and the knobs came with the panel. I can show you, that's that one. Had to replace the whole panel, and on the back of that, we had to move the interface board over to this new panel. We had to take the gauge off the old one, put it on the new panel as well. So a little bit of work to do, but we're going to show you how to do similar to this, but nowadays they actually sell knob kits, and there's your kit. Comes with 2 knobs. We'll put the number in the description. If you only need to replace the one, I suggest just replace the one, save the other one for if this ever goes. But they're not interchangeable, and every Specialista series has its own knob kit. So the Specialista and the Prestigio is one kit, the Maestro is a different kit, and the Arte is a separate kit. So you just want to make sure. I'll put all that information in the description below, and you can purchase the kit that you need. Financially, it's probably about $23 Canadian, roundabout there, and with a little bit of time you can get those knobs replaced in a quick 20 minutes. All right, so we're going to get into this repair. We're going to replace the broken knob. This particular one has a piece of the plastic broken off that holds this in place, so it can just kind of pop on and off. Some don't break like this. Some break inside where you can turn the knob and there's no adjustment that happens, either knob. That's more of the usual kind of repair that I do, that it breaks on the inside. So, but we'll show you that when we get there. So at this point, the only tools that I'm really going to need are a star screwdriver and maybe a needle nose, and then we're going to get right at this. Okay, so we're going to get right at it. We just have to get into the machine to access this interface, but we have to take this off to do the repair. So turn my unit around, take the water tank off. I'm going to take the hopper out, and I'm going to take out these 2 screws here. And to get the top panel off, you can sometimes get your fingers under there, but I like to get that pick, just get under the corner and give it a tug up. So there we go. Now just be careful when you tug it up. There are wires connected. So at this point, I don't necessarily need to disconnect those. I'm just going to keep my top panel off to the side, and there we go. Let me come back to the front, and I have 2 screws right here, which are Phillips screws, star. Take these guys off. Try not to drop those screws inside the machine. They are magnetic, so you can pick it up if you have a magnet. It's easier not to drop them in though. Once those 2 screws are out, my front interface board can actually come up. There's a couple things that are connected here, so you want to be very careful on pulling this and how far. You have a wire, a ribbon cable, and you have a hose for the pressure gauge. So I'm just going to pull it up a little bit, and there we go. So here's where I'm going to use my needle nose, and I'm just going to pull out this small little clip that's holding in my hose. There we go. Now the ribbon cable here, don't try and take it out of this side. You'll never get it back in. Take it off of this board here and take this grommet off, and then the ribbon cable is just going to pull up. and just get a good grip on it and just do it lightly. I usually kind of wiggle it back and forth a little bit and pull up, and it comes off pretty nicely. So here's our interface board. I'm just going to reset with a little bit more room on my table, and we're going to get right at replacing this knob. Great, so we have our front interface off, our front panel. We got to get to this button. I usually like to put a towel down just to protect my machine here, because I'm going to be laying it face down. So what I have to do now is to get to my buttons, my dials, I need to take off this white cover, and it's quite a few screws. We're probably going to do the fast movement on this. Okay, all my screws are out. There's only one more thing that I want to tend to. I'm going to take off this grommet that's holding the ribbon cable. I'm just going to set that aside. This ribbon cable is going to kind of go through the cover, so I just want to make sure that it's not held on or gripped on. And we can take off our cover just like that. As you see, it has a rubber gasket all the way around it. This machine uses a lot of steam and pressure and water, and we want to make sure that we don't compromise our interface board at any time with water or steam. That's why. So when you put it on, you want to make it nice and snug and make sure that that's getting a really good seal. So we're here, we got the cover off. We're just going to take the interface off just nice and lightly. And as you see, the button, the dials come through the interface, through the board, and that's where the adjustments are on the interface. We'll take a look at that. They might be a little stiff, so I'm just going to take my pick and just kind of work it off. And this one is really stiff. There we go. There's my broken button. It's going to come off with my board, and as you see, there's a little dial in there that will move when you turn your dial and make any adjustment. So I'm just going to set this aside, and we're going to come back to the interface, because what we're going to do is we're going to actually put the dial back on, and then we'll be ready to go. So this is a good example of the back grommet fell off with all the buttons. The buttons will go in place. There's only one that matters. It's the power button, and it will actually only go in one way. This one is shaped a little bit differently. So once you get it in its place, the grommet will go back on. For all intents and purposes, I'm just going to leave that off right now because it's going to be easier to work with my panel, not worrying about these buttons and if they're falling in the right place, but we'll get to that shortly. So I have my new kit here. What's in the kit? And this one is for the EC9335 or EC9355 version. And that's the Prestigio and the first generation of Specialista. In the kit, I have 2 buttons and 2 dials. I believe the buttons are the same on the inside. There we go. And like I said, if you don't need to replace this one, I suggest don't. Save it if it ever goes down the road. There we go. We're just going to take a look at these, see if there's a difference. There is, in some versions, these are different, and you want to make sure you get the right one on the right side. I think the Arte is slightly different, but these ones feel like they are physically the same. So to replace this button, we need to come up from the back side, and we have a small little tab there, which makes the button not go as far. And I believe the tab is going to be on the longer stretch side. So we just push that button right in and it pops in. There we go. So I'm going to turn that over. I'm going to take my dial, and my dial should snap right on. So now I've just replaced my dial. There we go. Dial, knob, people call it one or the other. So with that said, I can get back to replacing my buttons here. And these buttons are very generic, so they don't need to be placed in the right way or the wrong way. All the ones down here. And I know my power button is a different shape, and it'll only fit in one way in its position. There we go. That's it. So at this point, I can actually put my grommet back on. Is that the right way? I'm holding the board up because if I push it down, it's actually going to, sorry, I had the grommet the wrong way. If I let the board sit on the towel, it's actually going to push those buttons back up again. There we go. There we go, nice and snug. All right, so I'm just going to kind of set this offset. I've just kind of set it on my pliers to keep it up off the ground. And I'm just going to pull this button out of the other control before I replace the board onto the interface board. Okay, I'll have to pause. So I'm just going to take the old broken one out, set it aside, and I'm going to take my interface board and I'm going to put it in place. And if you can see in that hole there, there's it's not a full circle, it's a dial with a flat spot. On both sides, we're going to have this on both of these controllers. So we want to make sure that our posts go in the right spot. So I'm just going to pretty much just lay it on there. And I'm going to get underneath it and turn the dial until it fits in its right spot. I'm not going to force it. I just want to turn the dial until it fits in its right key spot. Once that's done, my board is on. I can actually put my cover back on. Right through there. Now here, I like to kind of press fit this just to make sure it's in the right spot. And then I'm going to start putting my screws back in. Okay, so I've got all the screws in. I really don't want to crank them tight because these screws go into plastic. You don't want to break the plastic, but really nice and snug. That's a good way to do it. What I like to do is turn the board around, make sure my dials are working. And then lastly, I'm going to check each individual button just to make sure they're pressing properly, and they are. So that's great. So now we're really on our way to reassemble the machine, and we fixed the broken knob. The broken one can get tossed out. There's no sense in keeping it, and save the other one just in case the other one goes. Comes as a kit, you get the two, so You can't just buy the one knob that you need, but they're fairly inexpensive, and that's good. So I got my ribbon cable grommet on. One thing I'm going to do before I turn this guy over is I'm going to pull the O-ring out for the hose. I always put the O-ring on the hose and then put the hose into the coupling. If you leave the O-ring in there and you try to jam in your hose, there's multiple times where you'll hurt the integrity of the O-ring, and that's where you'll have a leak. So always pull the O-ring out, put it on the hose, and then put the hose and the O-ring into the coupling. And that's what we'll do. Let me get situated here. All right, so I've got my machine back here, my board here. One thing I'm gonna do first is my O-ring on my hose. And just put it on. If you have a little bit of water or tap nearby, just put your finger on it, put a little bit of liquid on the O-ring just to make it go into the coupling easier. And what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna take that, push it right into the coupling. Sometimes you just need to give it a wiggle. You'll feel when it goes in. And then from there, I'm gonna just use my clip and clip it right in. There we go. It's in. Give it a little tug. It's definitely in. That part's done. I'm going to come to my ribbon cable, and I need to get this into my board just down here inside the machine. Just a tip, when you're putting that ribbon cable down into its position, don't push too hard. You don't want to push the connector off of the PCB board. I've seen that before. Just a nice gentle push, and you'll see when it goes in, nice and easy. We do have a grommet to put over the ribbon cable, just to keep any water or steam out of that board area. There we go. And then we can pop this guy back on. So I'm just gonna kind of get it into place. As you see, it wants to go into place. And I'm gonna kind of knock it right in its spot. There we go. So the hard part's done. I'm gonna put 2 screws back in. You just wanna make them nice and snug. What I usually tell the guys that I work with is just use the tips of your finger, and that's pretty much about how much strength you can use. But if you're doing it this way, good chance that you are gonna break those off. Also, if you use a power screwdriver, if you don't have it on the lightest setting for ratchet, then you also have another chance to break those or strip those screw holes. So just to keep that in mind, I usually like to do it by hand. So now we have our top. We haven't taken any wires off here, so when I put this back on, I just want to make sure the wires are out of the way. So I haven't changed anything. We have our grinder here that has to match up to our adjustment ring. I haven't made any changes, so this just might actually fit right back on and right on the adjustment, and it is. I can feel it clicking. That means the adjustment ring is mated up to the grinder. If by chance it's not, you've turned that and you can't get it adjusted, it will go back on, but it's gonna slide like an ice skate, so to speak. So if it's not adjusted, turn your grinder all the way counterclockwise and turn it back 2 clicks, 1, 2, and then your adjustment ring, you're gonna turn it to the remove, and then you're gonna set this down. And this actually should line up to the point where your grinder is connected again. Now I have some beans in there, so it's getting a little hard, but that's a good trick. All the way counterclockwise on the inside, turn this to the remove, 2 clicks back clockwise, and then set it down, and it should mate pretty easy. So once it's set there, I just give it a couple little taps, And there we go. Our top is on. That's connected. We're almost there. Couple screws on the back. And again, these are just tabs coming off the front or the top panel. So even lighter than snug. You just like that. I use 3 fingers and I don't break those tabs, but it is a very common thing to break those tabs. If you do, your machine's still operable. It's just to keep that top down. Usually it's not gonna move anyways. But there we go. We can get our water tank and our hopper. Got some beads in there so it's not going in down. I'll clean that up later. And we are set. So we replace the broken dial and we'll test our machine and it'll be great. So that's how you replace the knob.